Welcome back. We are loving this conversation about money. So we are here with Claudia Sawaf, who is a wealth manager here in Orange County, and she is going to share with us a new undertaking of her own called Flow, Finance Through the Lens of Women. Claudia, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for
Such an
coming. We've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now.
Definitely. When I first read about what you're doing to help women, I was, the word fear kept coming up, how we're afraid to earn what we feel like we're worth. We're afraid to say what we're worth. We're afraid to do, I say we in a general term, but maybe I should say me.
No, it's super true. And if it weren't true, she wouldn't be starting a movement, because
That's right.
women have come to you with the same issues, right?
And that's exactly, it's not me. It is indeed we. Because I'm in the same boat. I've been a wealth manager for 19 years. And yet, money is one of those topics where we have to remember that there's a certain way we grew up around money. I just had the most pleasant conversation with Constance, and she shared even how some of the ways that her parents grew up through the Great Depression are still playing a role in how she approaches money, how she manages it, or how she doesn't want to let go of items and looks for sale. And that's all great, because we can take the good from that. But when we have awareness of what's holding us back, and sometimes it is, and we may not acknowledge it as much, but fear is a big part around money.
Right.
So why do you think we have so much fear about money? What's the source of it?
I think the core is fear of losing something. And it's interesting because we haven't even accumulated as much as we set out to accumulate. But human nature, we're always afraid of losing something.
Do you think it's about the losing money? I think it's about losing relationships. I work with very successful women who are making often more money than their husbands, and they struggle with that. The men struggle with it, the women struggle with it. When I moved from corporate out to my own business, I had to learn a language around asking for my worth, because when you work for someone else, it's up to them how much you're worth. So I'm sure this is part of what these women are struggling with.
You're absolutely right. It's not just the fear of losing money, there's fear of being uncovered for doing something with money that maybe your spouse doesn't approve of, not wanting to talk about a certain expense or a certain money behavior. And so fear really doesn't just play into fear of losing money per se, but it's also fear of losing a reputation, fear of losing a relationship, a bond, if you will. And I think what happens when we have that fear, which is don't talk about it.
Put it away.
That's true. I have, what I'm afraid of is I'm afraid of saying I'm worth this much and have somebody say, no, you're not. That would be hard for me to charge something and have them say, no, I don't feel like I got the value of that. Or I'm afraid of going to a boss and saying, I deserve to be paid this much. I'm afraid of them saying, you know what, I don't like the way you handled that, and now I'm going to demote you. So losing that
rejection.
Kind of
There's rejection, but I think the other thing is that you're adjusting your expectation based on what you think they're going to do, and not just you. I mean, we've all done it, right?
Of course,
and I think every woman out there at some time has undervalued herself, has choked on the number, and so dumbed it down, and also just kind of put the checkbook away. I had an aunt who literally said, I can't be out of money, I still have checks. It's like, excuse me? Did I really just hear that?
So it's not educated as to some of the finer points.
So I think there's an issue of education here. Isn't that part of what you're addressing?
And this so much reminds me of my daughter when she was barely 5 years old. And she wanted something so badly, and I said, well, that's not in a budget. What's a budget? Well, we don't have the money allocated for this toy right now. And she goes, well, Mom, just take that plastic card you have and go to the machine and get some more. And I'm like, this is the daughter of a wealth manager, so how am I going to change this dialogue? And it's true, though. It's sometimes we just have these maybe misconceptions as well. But it is, so you mentioned worth, Amy. I think as women, sometimes we don't give ourselves as much credit to begin with. So part of the dialogue should definitely be that we don't associate worth necessarily with what is in our bank account. And so, this is me saying this as a wealth manager, but the word net worth is a term that I actually do not like. Associating our wealth with our worth is, for me, the wrong way of approaching money, because everyone has a different way of looking at what makes you happy. And if it's not necessarily the zeros behind the one that gives you joy and happiness, then that's okay too. And I think especially in Orange County, that's not sometimes the easy conversation to have.
I think that's very true. And I don't want to make this like a gender comparison, but I kind of do.
And you kind of will.
And I kind of am going to right now. So
You have 3 women here.
But I know that my husband, for example, puts a lot of his own personal value on his job and what he's worth, or what people think he's worth, whatever. And I feel like that's a really typical thing for men to do, which is why it's hard for all of us when we lose our jobs, but I feel like it's really, really hard for men, because I feel like they do associate, that's a common conversation in our houses.
Right.
Okay, what's our net worth type of thing.
But that's also their role as provider, right?
It's normal.
So
natural.
if the men are the ones who are protecting and serving, right? The ones with the sword protect and serve, and we are the ones who are creating, we're using the money for different things.
Right.
We're thinking about it differently, and at the same time, the money does the same thing for all of us. It gives us choices. That's all it does. So you can take those many zeros if you don't want them,
Right.
and do something else with them. You can donate them. You can go build a well in Africa, as one of our guests previously would love for you to build a well in Africa. There's so many things you can do with the money, rather than saying, this is my personal worth, but here is what it's allowing me to do. It has nothing to do with me personally. It's going to allow me to be bigger in the world, do more in the world.
And that's really where mindset comes in as well, because at the end of the day, we all want money. But it's more, why do we want it, and what can money do for us? And it's interesting, the less we chase it, the more it actually flows to us.
The law of attraction is strong,
which is what I love about
flow. Is because we can approach it from the fear and scarcity and afraid of losing something, or I can approach it and say, if I really know what makes me happy, why I do what I do, then all of a sudden the word budget is not so scary anymore, because then I can say, if volunteering and having an allocation in my budget that does contribute to the well, and that's really meaningful to me, and something else is not as meaningful, I have control over that. But it's taking that power back and having the education and the confidence and the competence to make the right decision around money. It's just, there's nothing out there that teaches us.
So what are some ways that you would advise us to take the power back, so we can start making those choices that you're talking about?
I think it truly starts with education and awareness. And that's where the project Flow really was born. It's that finance through the lens of women, because we as women value relationships. We value learning with each other, from each other, and being all in this together. So when we can hold each other accountable, and we start having best practices and remind each other what it's all about, and that it's okay to have a conversation with your spouse on a difficult subject, because maybe there's an expenditure that means a lot to you, but maybe some time ago you were afraid to bring that up because you're afraid of being judged, you're afraid of the provider will look at the numbers differently, maybe not putting so much value to what means so much to me. But if we don't talk about it, then it's always going to be a friction, right? And so my goal is really let's bring it to awareness, change the mindset around money, and then put some programs where on a monthly basis we can all learn together, and where no subject is taboo.
Well, I know 2 people who are going to be registering very quickly, so we're ready for you. Claudia,
Good.
how can our viewers find you? How can they find you?
So the best way is probably social media, right? We're all on there.
That's right.
Certainly Instagram, Facebook, you search Claudia Sawaf and you'll probably find me in all different ways. And then we have a new website that's almost up. The domain is claudiasawaf.com.
Okay.
And that will feature our monthly courses. We'll also do more of a life casting environment. We did a focus group with a very diverse group of women that I so respect, and I just value that they took their time and came out and shared with me what's important to them. And what came out of it, that life sessions are just as important because it helps us to interact and ask questions. And so there's a lot of good programs, including some retreats down the road where we can get together in person.
We're in.
Yes, we
We're
are.
in. Claudia, thank you so much for sharing, and we are very excited to see how this evolves for you. We'll
Thank
bring
you
you
so
back.
much.
Will you
I'm
come
excited
back
as
and
well.
talk some more?
Absolutely,
Okay,
would love to.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.